Welcome back in. It's Cougar Sports Saturday. Big week for BYU football as players report and camp is underway. So exciting, man. I can't wait for the equipment reveals. This is such an exciting time of year because for the rest of this calendar year, we have fantastic sports ahead. Football is here. Basketball is shortly behind, and coming up in our next segment, we'll have assistant coach John Linehan to talk about this BYU basketball team and all the excitement and fun that has happened and how he got to BYU. But there's football, there's basketball, it's right here, man.
Got the Olympics. We'll have Jimmer Talk in hour number 3. It's an exciting time for sure, and for BYU football, it's a year where the excitement isn't maybe on the outside. I think inside the building, there's a belief, there's a confidence that they can surprise people. It's just, you wonder how high is the ceiling for this team. But, I always like a BYU team as an underdog. I'll tell you that. I like that spot much better. Look, you want the expectations because, pressure is a privilege in the words of Brett Yormark. But you'd much rather be a preseason favorite than be near the bottom. But, if you're going to be in the bottom and have low expectations, I like an underdog BYU team. And who are some players or that you're really curious to see in fall camp coming into next week?
We already touched on one of these guys, but Jackson Bowers to me is such an interesting player because even last year he never really broke in and took on a role like we maybe thought he could just by recruiting rankings and expectations based off those rankings. But he's got a unique build, Mitch. There's not a lot of Jackson Bowers on this football team. And coming out of high school, he wasn't just a one-trick pony. So I'm really curious if last year, and the thing we have to remember too with the Jackson Bowers of the world, sometimes we just assume that you'll show up to college football and it's going to be easy. Jackson is living in a different state than he grew up in, and the adjustment to another level, it's hard. And sometimes I think we underestimate that learning curve. But this is his second year in the program. All that's kind of under the bridge right now, Mitch. He knows he should know the playbook better. He should know what to expect in terms of balancing classes and practice and weight room. I'm curious if there's a big jump from him. Maybe not to the tune of what we saw in Isaac Rex's freshman year, but can he be someone who is routinely playing because he knows what he's doing and he's comfortable and we finally get to see that athletic ability? So that's a guy I'm really curious to watch because he's got the physical tools. It's just, can he get the playbook down and know what he's doing? And if he can, I think there's an opportunity for him to play.
His offer sheet coming out of Mesa, Arizona was impressive. I mean, he turned down the likes of Washington, Auburn, Alabama. I mean, the who's who in college football. This guy turned them down to sign with BYU. So Jackson Bowers is a big-time prospect, and I think it is fair that we do forget, sometimes it's a little bit tougher transition. I know I fall into the bucket where it's like you see that offer sheet, you go, you got to produce.
Right.
And in this era, too, there's a little bit less patience when there's money on the line, and we're going to get into an era next year where it's revenue sharing. A little bit less patience going to be given, but they are still young people in transitioning to maybe living on their own. I mean, it is different, and you hope that now year 2, a little bit more comfort, a little bit more
Totally.
Clear idea with what he's expected to become, and new tight end coach gives a kind of a clean slate to everyone. So it'll be interesting to see what Jackson Bowers does. A guy that I'm really curious to see is in the interior of the defensive line. He's a new face. I expect him to be a starter by any stretch, but I think he could be a 2-deep guy and really round out the depth. Is Luke Tuamalatai from the JC ranks. He was a pass rusher in the interior, and you always get a little bit nervous with JUCO guys because you're like, they're going to qualify, they're going to be on time. Remember last year, David Latu, a guy that coaches really like going into this year. He didn't get into fall camp until midway through, and it was kind of a lost season where he didn't really make much of a difference. This year he's going to do much more. Latu will, but Tuamalatai is expected to be ready to go for day 1 of camp, and I think he's someone that, there's been this quiet feeling of there's no panic losing Danny Saili to Arkansas. On the surface, it looked like, he was a big loss, and look, I felt he was. But there are options. Blake Mangelson's going to go to the interior of the defensive line. At the tackle, John Nelson is there, and I think John Nelson's going to be really good. this season. And then I mentioned David Latu and Luke Tuamalatai. And so there's players there in the interior, and Josh Singh always kind of works his way into the conversation and competes. So I think that position is a little bit thin, but they need like a Luke Tuamalatai to come in and be a dude right away to help round out that depth.
Let's take another break. We'll switch to hoops. John Linehan, assistant coach, joins us next.